Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. I'm JT, joined by the usual crew of Jake, Frank, and Lounis. We are on Season 2, Episode 15, Week 10, going into Week 11. Last time we left you, we'll just kick it off right here. Last time we left you, there was the OBJ news. He wanted out of Cleveland. Trade deadline came and went. A lot of times already separated us from last week to now. He's officially a Ram. He even played in the game as a Ram. Didn't do a whole lot, but could you blame him? Only had a couple days there. I don't know. I feel like every other podcast probably has touched us on this already, guys. But initial thoughts, reactions, what we see from OBJ. What would you be willing to give up for him? What would you be able to trade him for?
I think my first initial thought is I feel like the OBJ doubters are kind of doing victory laps way too early. Everyone who said, or I guess was on Baker's side in it, saying it's Odell's fault. Everyone's like, oh, you see, first game. And he played 15, 16 snaps that first game. So I still think he can be pretty productive in that Rams offense. I think he can put up wide receiver 2 numbers, not high wide receiver 2, but kind of on the lower end. And I don't know, what would you say his asking price is right now? A mid-second?
That's what people will want. People will want at least that, probably higher, just because the Rams offense scores a lot of points. He's Odell Beckham, the big name factor there. And obviously this is touching on another thing, is Robert Woods got hurt. Robert Woods tore his ACL. So people are gonna expect him to slide right into that, number 2 receiver role right behind Cooper Kupp and produce very similarly, which I don't know if that's fair to Odell or not. He's brand new to the offense. I don't know. I'm very torn here on Odell.
I'm probably out on Odell for whatever the asking price is. I used to be super in on him. I just think there's too much that goes together where it's OBJ and his pass production and everything, and it's the shiny new guy on the Los Angeles Rams, which is this crazy good offense that's supporting Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, who's wide receiver 1 on the year. I just don't think it's going to work how everyone expects it to. I don't know. I struggle to see OBJ putting up more than low-end wide receiver 2 numbers on the rest of the season. And to me, to spend an early second, late first, I've seen Twitter telling me I should be trading for OBJ, that's too high for me. Frank, you're probably the opposite.
No, I'd buy him for a late second. I probably wouldn't go anything crazy from there.
I was going to say mid-second, I think I'd pull the trigger on if I'm a contender. I'm not giving up somewhere 203 or higher. A late first is kind of crazy for Odell at this point, but I think he can produce. I know the entire Rams offense kind of looked like shit Monday night, besides Cooper Kupp, who he's just automatic every single week. But I think their bye week's coming at a good time. I know they just had 2 straight losses, but they have their bye week this week where he gets to pick up the offense a ton more. I'd be pretty, excited to see him after the bye week. I know it kind of makes it tough with the trade deadline in a lot of leagues coming up soon. So it's kind of do you want to take the gamble of trading for him before you could see him post-bye? But if it's a mid-second or lower, I think I'd pull the trigger on it. If it's anything 204, 203 and higher, I don't think I'd do it.
A little bit of a teaser, but we did our very early 2022 rookie mock draft. And we had some nice juicy picks in that beginning to middle of the second round. So I don't know how I'm feeling about trading them for Odell after doing that.
Yeah. Moving on, Robert Woods, Jake kind of touched on earlier. He tore his ACL. Not much more to say other than that sucks. Feel bad for him. I bet there's a lot of people that trade for him that thought they were contenders. He was a top 15 wide receiver on the year at the time he tore his ACL. I don't know. Not much more to add than kind of sucks. You guys have anything else?
Tyler Higbee gets a small boost from me. I think everyone's looking at the wide receivers to be oh, that means Van Jefferson's going to do more. That means Odell's going to do more. I think it will help them with Robert Woods not being there, but I think Tyler Higbee's kind of someone who's not being talked about at all that I think is going to get a boost from Robert Woods being out.
I think it's mainly Odell and Van Jefferson because I said it a little bit last week. Robert Woods' role, right? If you're going to play off-man coverage, I feel like that's where Robert Woods is going. To me, Higbee is more so just kind of like the second Cooper Kupp for that offense. If you're gonna play tight or play zone, then you go to Higbee. So OBJ, Robert, and Van Jefferson for me are the winners from this injury. If you're gonna start predicting what's happening without Robert Woods.
All right, moving on. Elijah Mitchell had surgery on his finger. I don't know how long he's expected to be out. I think a couple weeks. Does leave the door open for our boy Trey Sermon, who has not done anything yet. Apparently, there's a post in r/Dynasty asking if he's droppable.
Don't drop Trey Sermon.
I
It's
would
like
not
the
drop
worst time to drop Trey Sermon in the entire year. Like, you've been holding him until now when like they actually need him. He should be acclimated, right? This is a big week coming up for Trey Sermon to see, like, is he truly a flop in a face plant, or is he going to have that Cam Akers like resurgence when, he was a consensus bust. People seem to forget that. Like, at the beginning of the season, it was like, oh my God, Cam Akers, the guy, healthy scratch, all that nonsense, right? This is the week where all of that crap could just be completely erased and we see Trey Sermon get 20 carries. Or it confirms our suspicion and he sucks. Like,
Jeff Wilson season, boys.
I was going to say, I have a bad feeling it's just going to be like Jeff Wilson gets like 20 touches. Sermon maybe gets like 4.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that this is the week because we've seen it before with these guys, these wide zone coaches that have done this, right? They just randomly, the one week it's like, okay, we do not trust to give this guy even a freaking jersey to wear, and then the next week we're ready to give him 20 carries. It's just, I don't know, this is just the way these guys operate.
I mean, if I'm betting, I'm saying it's more likely than not it's not going to be Trey Sermon. But if it is Trey Sermon, that could be a huge boost. Could finally recover some value, maybe some optimism going into next season or, following weeks. I don't know. Trey Sermon's a firm hold for me for now, at least. I'm definitely not dropping him. And his value is too low to consider really trading him at this point for what he could potentially be worth. Next on our list, Cordell Patterson injured his ankle. I think he's out for 2 to 4 weeks. Is he out only Thursday? I think it's like a 2 to 4 week injury from what I was reading. That also stinks, kind of like the Robert Woods issue. It's just super high ranked player. He's kind of just a running back wide receiver athlete, but super high ranked. Gets injured at like the worst time for people trying to make the playoff push, people that are competitors. I mean, he should be back for the playoffs, unlike Robert Woods. I don't know. It looked like people thought it was going to be Mike Davis that got the big bump. It was actually Wayne Gallman, surprisingly. Probably someone on your waivers that you can go add, speculative add. I don't know. To me, neither Wayne Gallman nor Mike Davis really seemed like totally intriguing options. I'm not like rushing to trade for either of them if I had Cordell Patterson. But if you're a competitive team like Jake in our league, for example, who's just always losing running backs or guys running backs on bye, they're two good guys to add, I guess, Davis and Gallman.
I was gonna say though, do you feel if you're at a point where you're just like depleted at running back, or you're just trying to throw someone there that you think might get like 8 touches or something, go ahead. But if you're a contender like making a playoff push, do you feel comfortable putting either of those guys in your flex for this week? I don't.
Against the Patriots.
As a desperation play, like there's not many guys you can pick up on a dynasty waiver wire and just throw in on a weekly basis. So if you're gonna say like you can pick up Wayne Gallman, who's gonna get 8 touches next week, that's better than playing a guy that's gonna get 3 that's sitting on your bench doing absolutely nothing.
I mean, it's not like Mike Davis can't score points and hasn't had some weeks where he's put up like 9, 8, 10 points. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but it's not. Let's not act like he's Voldemort and you can't play him and that he will score 0.
Well, the issue is though you are playing a game of last week. Wayne Gallman had 15 touches in Cordell Patterson's absence. Mike Davis had 4, I guess 5. He had 1 target too, but you're playing that weird game of the Patriots kind of do it when we're without Damian Harris.
That's part of it.
Beat the Patriots. Yeah, you're playing like that throwing dart game.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you should go out and start him. I'm just saying like if you're in the Jake scenario where you have no running backs, like, I mean, what else are you gonna do? Like, I'm not gonna go out and overpay for someone who doesn't play.
That's fair. No, I think the point I was trying to make with what JT said, with Wayne Goldman getting 15 carries to Mike Davis's 4, I have no idea what to predict for next week with who gets the heavy majority, because I don't know if it was a scenario where it's just they were getting blown out by halftime. What was the score at halftime? Like 36-3. And it's to the point maybe if at the start of a game, or like if the game's somewhat competitive, they'd be playing Mike Davis, but because they're getting blown out, they played the backup. That's the part that's hard to tell for me.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in that spot where you're looking at like Adrian Peterson and Mark Ingram and stuff, like, I guess
apparently you can't get Mark Ingram anymore. He's impossible to get.
Hey, he scored 20 points.
That's true. All right, moving on. Final one. This is what looked like it was going to be the biggest one, but turned out to be not as bad. Aaron Jones hurt his MCL, didn't tear it. Looks to be like a multiple week injury, but multiple, I mean like 2.
The chef just said 1 to 2. They have a bye week coming up soon, so I'd guess probably sometime after that bye.
So probably misses 1 game, maybe 2 games, but should be back for playoffs. I don't know. AJ Dillon time. He's someone that people were super high on going into the season when we were doing our keep trade cut rankings and doing our overrated, underrated. AJ Dillon was in the top 30 at that point. I think he's only shot up higher with the Aaron Jones injury, which is kind of funny since it's only a 2-week injury, but that's kind of just how Dynasty goes now. It's essentially redraft. I don't know. To me, AJ Dillon, he's okay.
I definitely feel good starting him while Jones is hurt.
Yeah, he's definitely startable. I think if you're going out and buying him now and paying whatever price he's probably being valued at right now, I think you're overpaying.
What I was kind of surprised to see was, I think I saw it either on Twitter or the Dynasty Reddit. It was, who would you rather own in Dynasty between Dillon or Aaron Jones? And it was like 70% AJ Dillon.
Ryan McDowell tweeted out. On Twitter.
Really? That surprises
that's a little absurd to me.
That's absurd.
Yeah, like that was.
I've said it before, but we've only seen 1 real game from AJ Dillon. That was against the Titans. It was a snow game where the Titans,
one of the worst run defenses.
No one could run. No one could get any footing. It was a horrible game.
Yeah, I mean, this week will be a solid litmus test for AJ Dillon, but to me, I'm not running out and going to buy him.
Not only that, if I had AJ Dillon, I'm looking to sell in the hype. I don't hate AJ Dillon. It's just at a certain point, players get overvalued, right? Like,
this is a very good time to sell high.
The guy hasn't done anything.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, where I like AJ Dillon, but based off that poll, I guess he's being viewed somewhere in like that RB12 to RB15 dynasty back ranking, or 10 to 15, which is kind of like that's too high for me on AJ Dillon when Jones is still under contract.
I'm not saying he can't become a lead back. It's just, I'd rather have the value and go find it myself.
Out of curiosity, do any of you know Aaron Jones' contract situation? I know he recently signed one, but I don't know when the out is in that deal.
They can get out either after 2 or 3 years. I forgot what it was. I'll look it up now, though.
AJ Dillon is currently ranked on Keep Trade Cut as running back 19, and it's only shooting up currently.
RB19.
Aaron Jones is
Aaron Jones, the Packers have an out in his contract after next season, which is pretty interesting if you think about
it's after the 2023 season.
No, it's not. It's after the 2022 season. So they have an out.
Either way, I don't care either way. To me, it's just we're looking at like an Alexander Madison scenario if we're doing that, where it's just like he's a solid handcuff. He's a high value player, but you're paying more than the production.
They can get out after 2022, but it costs them $6.5 million, which isn't crazy. But that's still $6.5 million versus if they do after 2023, it's only $2 million.
The thing is,
I think a big part of it's going to be if Rodgers.
Rodgers. I think we all expect him to be somewhere else next year. I think he tweeted out the Last Dance stuff for a reason. I think he's pretty done with Green Bay.
Yeah, I don't think it's definite, but I think At this
But
point,
that
I'd say
also
more
affects,
likely than
if
not.
we all think Rodgers is gone, that also makes me lower on AJ Dillon too, not just Jones. Because if it's a Jordan,
all right, at a certain point, like, are we evaluating AJ Dillon or everything but AJ Dillon? Like, to me, AJ Dillon, he's a good player. I'm selling him at a top 20 price. He just hasn't proven
You're
it.
selling
Okay,
him to close to J.K. Dobbins.
exactly.
He's
And
very
I'd much rather
underrated,
have Dobbins. I'd rather have Josh Jacobs, like, pretty easily still.
That's oh my god.
I think Jacobs is well behind him too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
that's a move I would love to do.
Not well, but at this point, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, if
Um,
you can get that price for him, it's going. I have a PSA, though. I have a PSA.
Let's hear it.
the Frank PSA.
I have seen this far too many times in the dynasty leagues that I'm in, at least. I'm in, I think, 6 or 7 of them. And it happened in every single one. I've fallen victim to this same thing I'm about to rant about, but that's not marketing your players when you're selling them. You know, like, okay, Corey Hemplo. We're in a rebuild league. So this is an example we all know. Melvin Gordon was just traded for KJ Hamler and a 4th round pick. I can almost guarantee you that there was another team in the league willing to outbid that offer. Because that is, I mean, at least I have Melvin Gordon in a league. I just traded for him. Like, no shot that you're getting him for that. It's an RB2. I've seen in every league. You know, you get into trade talks with someone, you're going back and forth a couple of times, and all you're doing is pigeonholing yourself to one buyer, and you're letting them set the market. I know that this is starting to get into some sort of like an ethical discussion of, oh, should you go and market out trade offers that you have? I don't even think you need to do that. I just think that you should say, throw him on the trade block, a little message in the league, hey, got a couple offers for this guy, looking to move him. Like, gonna move him soon if you're interested. Because a lot of the time, like, I, at least in my leagues, I make assumptions about other people's teams based on what I would do, which are not always correct. And I can guarantee you that other people are doing the same. So if you're a team that is somewhat competitive and has Melvin Gordon, everyone's just going to expect you to have him. So even though I might want him, I'm just going to think, oh, he's a contender. Why would he sell Melvin Gordon? But if you go out and then sell Melvin Gordon, like, well, you may have just fallen into that trap where you trade him for a 4th round pick and an injured receiver. That's all right. Maybe worth a 3rd. Not even come draft time.
Yeah, no.
So, like, if you are making a trade and you have not talked to multiple people, really think about that really quickly. Is this trade so good in your eyes you don't have to talk to anyone else? Okay, fine. Go ahead and do the deal. But if it's a so-so offer, why are you not marketing out the trade to benefit yourself and your team instead of just pigeonholing yourself into, oh, I have to take this offer or I'm not going to be able to trade this guy?
Yeah, I agree completely with that. And I think where it gets tricky is you should do that when someone comes offering you a trade for your player, for someone that you like, where you start to lose equity with other owners. And what I'm advising not to do is you going out and I'll offer for, say, Frank has Cooper Kupp. I offer a decent trade for Cooper Kupp. Frank's like, yeah, let me think about that. Then he comes back to me. He's like, yeah, I like the deal. And I go, okay, hold on, wait 1 second. Let me see if I could trade these guys for a better player. Like, I've seen that a lot in leagues where it's like you have like a tentative deal, but then the other owner like is like, yeah, like let's go through with this. And then you go, well, maybe I'm selling too low on this guy. Let me go try and trade him elsewhere. It's, first off, you're likely not going to get a better deal when you do something like that. Second off, you start to lose equity and trust with those other owners. They're less likely to, negotiate with you. They're less likely to give you a better deal with, 3rds and 4ths and all those other stuff. But for the most part, if someone's coming and offer you, especially like a high coveted asset too, like it doesn't even have to be a Melvin Gordon, a Justin Herbert, someone that you're trying to move off of, like a young rookie quarterback. We had Zach Wilson. We just traded for Zach Wilson in our league. I'm sure there are people in that league that we just traded for Zach Wilson for that would have offered much better deals than what we offered.
Yeah.
So
I saw that notification pop up and I did not believe it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So
And it goes back to the trading strats. You just offer shit out and see what sticks, man.
yeah. So it goes both ways, but for the most part, you're always better off checking beforehand.
I don't really
Sorry if I
buy
took that
into
over.
a ton of the whole like trade etiquette stuff aside from like the major stuff. Like, okay, I'm not gonna do any of those major flaws where if someone offers me a trade, unless it's like I'm dealing Patrick Mahomes, because I think you almost have the excuse. Like, I'm not gonna be saying, oh, so and so offered me this, you have to beat this, right? It's a little too blatant. But I think you can beat around the bush and be ethical enough while at the same time covering your own bases and trying to maximize the most you can out of your assets. So yeah, I had to say that because there are so many times where I look at trades that go through and say to myself, well, shit, I would have offered more for that player if you would have just let me know and he was available.
Exactly. Speaking of that, let's talk about some players that could be available in your leagues on your market that contenders would want to buy. Going into this playoff push. I'll just kick us off real quick. I put down Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins is.
We're only talking about the quarterback position, by the way.
Yes, quarterback position. We've covered at this point wide receivers and tight ends, I believe, and running backs.
Yeah, and running backs.
Quarterback position. I'm saying buy Kirk Cousins. The reason for that being Kirk Cousins is sneakily quarterback 10 on the year. I don't know if people knew that. Bye week is already gone. Quarterback 10. He's got Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen as his receivers. Tyler Conklin's whatever. But, Kirk Cousins is someone who has consistently performed and outperformed expectations, but for some reason is always undervalued. Now, he's also one that we're going to get to a few other people on this list. I know they drafted Kellen Mond, but I don't think Kellen Mond is that guy. Frank would probably strongly disagree with that kind of opinion, but I just think Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback. He's an above average quarterback in my eyes. He's someone that also doesn't have a terribly difficult schedule. I know he struggles against the Packers, and they play the Packers one of their weeks. But to me, Kirk Cousins is the one that I think will maintain value. I think he'll produce for you when you need it. So, I don't know. Kirk Cousins, he's my buy.
I like that buy. I mean, I've always kind of been a low-key Kirk Cousins fan. I do think you're going to have to pay up, though, because he's kind of gone from that, he's probably worth an early second to now he's in the void. He's in the, you want a first.
It's going to take you a late first.
Get that.
Look,
he plays the
at this
Packers
point,
next week and second to last week of the season this year championship, or is that week? What's going on here?
Championship is week 17 this year.
Because you're completely right, JT. If you're buying him, you do get 2 Packers weeks, and with the way the Packers defense has been playing A and B, the history, I would not want to start Kirk Cousins either of those weeks. I think that's a good point and a little bit of a cautionary thing for him.
Yeah, I mean. You get to the championship, though, anything can happen in the championship.
True.
I think, though, he does have, while we're talking about the Packers weeks, I mean, he has the Lions and he has the 49ers, which he could perform against. What you're saying about price is, someone else I really liked, I still do like, but feeling much less confident about is Baker Mayfield. I think they're in like that similar tier where it's just like with Kirk, at least like he's good, like he's solid, but you don't know what his future really holds. With Baker, he's okay. And you also don't know what his future holds, but he's young. And so that's why their value is like very similar in my opinion. To me, if I'm looking to compete and I see a rebuilding team, I think switching Baker for Kirk Cousins is a deal that you could probably do, and it's a deal that I think I would advocate for at this point. That's just my opinion. I don't know about you guys.
That's a real interesting trade. That's an interesting trade.
Flipping Baker for Kirk.
All right, well, I'm going on to mine.
Frank has like
want
5.
to keep doing this. I'm gonna go for like the lower tier Kirk Cousins, I'm gonna call it, and that's Jimmy
Okay.
Garoppolo. And in this price range, there's almost two guys you can get, so I'll almost combine it because there's Jimmy Garoppolo and then there's Cam Newton, where I think they're gonna cost around the same. Jimmy G might be a little bit cheaper, but here's the situation: Jimmy Garoppolo has produced all right in the games that he's played. I think he's a serviceable quarterback too, especially because that offense is starting to figure things out. You know, Brandon Ayuk is out of jail. George Kittle is back. Debo's good, right? Offensive line is playing all right. Like they're starting to figure it out a little bit and they're starting to get rolling. The other thing too is that as of right now, it seems like Jimmy G dying at the end of the year is kind of priced in, where I don't think that's the case. I view Jimmy Garoppolo more so as an Alex Smith than I do some quarterback who after the season is just going to become a backup.
So you're projecting him to be traded to another team to be a bridge quarterback for another team.
Yeah,
something
traded,
like
released, and signed. I think that right now Jimmy Garoppolo is good enough to start next season, and I think there's a realistic shot that he can start the season after that. And he can kind of move around. Maybe he finds a home somewhere, or maybe he is just this journeyman like a Ryan Fitzpatrick. But considering we've seen guys like Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Fitzpatrick, to name a few among others, right, float around and stay relevant, I can only imagine a guy that has gone to a Super Bowl and not only that has had stretches where he's played very well. I think he'll be able to do that, and you're getting that at a very, very favorable price if you need a quarterback too for this year and like next year.
Well, I'm a Trey Lance truther, and I personally believe Trey Lance is going to start at the end of the season, but it's hard to deny the price that Jimmy G is at, where it's you could trade Devin Singletary straight up according to Heat Trade Cut for Jimmy Garoppolo, and his end of season schedule is, I think, unmatched for the easiest schedule.
Yeah, I think what is it? Even though I am on the wagon of I think Trey Lance is their guy next season and moving forward, I think they're going to keep Jimmy G in for the rest of this year because they're still in the playoff race. Like they're 4-5. Carolina's in that 7th spot at 5-5. They're going to stick with the veteran quarterback.
But see, this exact conversation is why I think that Jimmy G is a buy.
Yeah.
Because you can't mention Jimmy G without saying Trey Lance.
The Vikings, Seahawks, Bengals. That's they're the Jags this week. But then Vikings, Seahawks, Bengals, 3-week stretch following that.
Jesus Christ.
It will be what determines is going to happen. But after that, when you get to the playoffs, you got the Falcons, you got the Titans, and you got the Texans in the championship game. And to me, I don't know. I haven't done enough research, but I think that's the unrivaled easiest schedule in terms of quarterback against, fantasy defenses, however you want to describe it. But yeah, and then Cam. It's Cam. I don't know. He's got that rushing upside.
Yeah, he's like the anti-Jimmy G, right? That's a very much we think that he has high-end quarterback one upside. A late second round pick as a team. Let's say you maybe you're just looking for a third quarterback, or your quarterbacks are just average and you need a guy that does have insane upside. Well, if you're trying to make that championship push, I could easily see Cam Newton being one of those players that you're like, oh man, I really wish that I acquired him off of waivers, like in redraft, right? Like if you acquired him off of waivers and you're that fringe playoff team, he could easily be that player to kind of push your team over the edge and make you a championship contender. Considering you can get that done for probably a second round pick, why not? It's just, unlike Jimmy G, you're thinking that Cam Newton is only going to be relevant for the end of this year. And that next year, it's going to be a very similar story to this offseason of what happens with Cam Newton.
Yeah, that one I agree much more with.
Yeah, same.
All right, who's your other one, Frank?
Someone put Taylor Heinicke. That's not mine. I put because we're kind of going in like descending order of value, right? Because Kirk Cousins will cost the most. Then Jimmy G and Cam Newton cost around the same. Maybe Cam costs a little bit more, but regardless, that kind of fits that. Okay, we go from first round to like second, early third. Now we can go into real dart throw. Taysom Hill, purely because if he does end up playing as the quarterback, because he has been banged up a little bit, so maybe that's one of the reasons. Okay, maybe Sean Payton really likes what he's seen out of Simeon. Okay, but let's just say that Simeon gets hurt or starts playing like crap. If Taysom Hill becomes the quarterback, he's a low-end quarterback 1. We've seen it before. Maybe a high-end QB2. Regardless, right now he's worth pennies. He's probably around waivers. He's definitely rostered, but he's closer to a damn waiver spot than any relevant draft capital. So if you're looking for like a 4th quarterback or maybe a desperation 3rd quarterback and you don't want to give up anything, I just check to see if you can pick up Taysom Hill at like that throw-in price or for like a 4th or something.
Players ranked around him on Keep Trade Cut: James Washington, Tommy Tremble, Albert O.
Nothing.
It's throw-in price.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that price, I like it.
So that's
and
if you're like
rounder or something.
Really scrapping the bottom of the barrel. You're, licking the floors. Okay, go find a Taysom Hill.
Us floor lickers, we love Taysom
Also,
Hill.
don't lick the floors, please. Well, that goes to be said. I personally, I have never bought a quarterback as a contender as like I'm just going to go buy this guy for cheap. I have always operated under, if I'm going to buy a quarterback, I'm just going to pay up and get the good players. To me, like that's worth doing. So that is something to be said as well about the segment, is that I feel like you should definitely try to splash out some stuff to get that legit quarterback if you don't have him in these super flex leagues, because you can keep patching up the hole, but if you don't have an elite quarterback, that's going to really, really hurt you.
Have you looked floors, though? Have you looked at any floors?
I have not been licking any floors. That's because I invest in my quarterback position, so I don't have to go out there and start licking floors.
That's the second Frank PSA to not like any floors.
Noted non-floor licker Frank. All right. Which one do you put Taylor Heinicke on here?
That was.
Who do you think it was?
Looney.
Listen, I've been on the Heinicke bandwagon for a year. So I don't know, so the end of the season, especially towards like the playoffs stretch where you'd really be rooting for them to play well, the offense is going to get a lot more healthy. They're going to get Diami Brown back. They're going to get Logan Thomas back. They're going to get Curtis Samuel back. That's 3 pretty good weapons added to the Washington offense. He's had 8 starts this season, in which in 4 of those 8 starts, he scored over 20 fantasy points. He provides you a bit of rushing upside, and I think he's someone you could still get at not really an expensive price, because I feel like everyone just kind of assumes he has a starting job for the rest of the season. I feel like everyone just kind of assumes they're getting a new quarterback next year.
Mitch.
I'll take Heinicke over Mitch, but even though no disrespect to Maserati Mitch, I think he'll probably end up starting somewhere. But so with Heinicke, I still think he's gonna have their record good enough where they're not gonna get one of the top guys in the draft. If they want to draft someone kind of later first round, maybe a Malik Willis falls or something. We have to see how those quarterbacks play.
What's up with you and Malik Willis, Lounis? Is he?
Well,
is he like your crush?
No,
Yes.
because I think Howell and Corral are probably like the 2 most likely to go early. We'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But with Heinicke, like he's been good. And like fantasy wise, you can argue how he is as a real life quarterback, but for a contender buy right now, in half of his starts he scored over 20. He has always a little bit of a rushing floor with him. The offense is just going to get more healthy, and they've been playing well recently. They just beat Tampa Bay, I know like people have been shitting on them, but that's still a really good defense.
Yeah, well, to help your point too, Lounis, their schedule it's not the worst in the world.
They play
a lot of divisional. Yeah, it's a lot of divisional games, and their division is not that great. So that could definitely help them. I mean, Taylor, I think his best game came against the Giants, or second best game. I know they played one more time. Yeah, sorry, Jake. Completely forgot. His value also is not egregiously high like I thought it would be. I mean, I'm sure it's probably higher than what it's listed here, but it's KJ Osborne, Jalen Reagor, Julio Jones, Robbie Anderson is what
that list of players. What? Didn't KJ Osborne just score 0 last week?
I'm sure. There's a lot of fluctuation around there.
I mean, to be fair, so did Julio.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you Julio's not scoring for another 2 weeks. So I don't know. All right. Taylor Heinicke. You kind of convinced. I mean, I'm not going to go out and buy him based on that, but I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Moving on. Last guy in this, Derek Carr.
Yeah, that was mine. I think he's a very similar type of player here to like Kirk Cousins, where he's not the flashy guy. He's not super young. He's 30 years old, and he's a guy that just consistently puts up that high-end QB2 numbers. And he's a guy that a lot of people want to move off of because the Raiders are just a mess right now between firing Gruden, the whole Ruggs thing. He's not putting up top-end numbers, so his situation, I think, is pretty stable. But at the same time, if they went out and made a big move for an Aaron Rodgers, I don't think anyone would be that surprised. But he's a guy for the remainder of the season. Speaking of schedules, his schedule is very easy moving forward for the remainder of the year. And I think he's QB 15 right now. And I think similar to Kirk Cousins, so maybe slightly less than Kirk Cousins, probably a high-end second-round pick. Probably gets the deal done for Derek Carr here.
I definitely agree with it's not going to take a whole ton to get him. I want to see his end of season schedule because I do think his value right now is a little bit of a low. So I like the idea of buying low on him.
In weeks 15, 16, 17, which is the fantasy playoffs, he plays Cleveland, Denver, and Indy, none of which are great, none of which are bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Denver's at home, which would be the toughest one.
Yeah.
He plays Kansas City week 14 also.
That defense can't stop anybody.
He's QB 15. Like, and I think he's played well enough this year where it's like I wouldn't really be worried about Derek Carr not starting next year. Listen, I'm assuming it's going to be on the Raiders, but if it's not, he's definitely going to be starting somewhere. He's still easily a top 30, probably even higher QB in this league. So I like the buy. What's his price around right now? JT, you got it?
I do not currently, but I'll have it in 2 seconds.
I just asked because I know you have Keep Trade Cup pulled up.
I do have it pulled up. Derek Carr is currently ranked around Rondale Moore, Carson Wentz. One of these is not like the other. Kadarius Toney and Ryan Tannehill.
Kadarius Toney. If you can flip Derek Carr,
what is it in terms of draft value? Just straight up draft value.
If I was to guess, I'd say that's the void between an early second, late first. But let's see.
Yep, very similar to Kirk Cousins.
Yes,
guys, we have to go into the next segment because I have an image on the screen that makes no sense right now until we move on. Just so random.
If you're watching on the podcast, the image is a SpongeBob meme. So we're just gonna move on.
Yeah, it's the dude all bandaged up. Like, well,
yeah,
I thought he had
a skin guy.
Somebody just said watching podcast. I'm sorry if you're listening to podcast. All right, the injury scenario. Kick it off, Frank.
Okay, so I wanted to ponder. I'm actually curious as to what you guys think. JT, you just did a move like this in the 3rd and 20 league, in 3rd and 20 Dynasty League. What do you do with the injured players? If you have Derrick Henry, whatever running back that gets injured for the year, and you're a contending team, and you're like, crap, there goes my RB1. Do you package him and other assets to pick up a Kamara, a DeAndre Swift, a Najee Harris, any one of these talented running backs right now and just overpay for them real quick, get back in contention? Or on the contrary, if you're a rebuilding team, do you go out and start targeting these injured running backs at a discount and try to be the beneficiary of that sort of a trade with a contender? What is the move? I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions.
I gotta take, guys.
Go ahead, JT.
I think both is the right move.
I agree.
Let me tell you why. I think so. If you're in the 3rd and 20 league, which like 6 of you are, but in the 3rd and 20 league, we had a trade go down where I traded away DeAndre Swift, who I love. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows I love DeAndre Swift, and Juju Smith-Schuster for Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne. I included a second, Cortland Sutton. I got back. I know I'm mangling everything right now, but it was basically a large trade of a lot of players where it was, I was giving up the high asset in DeAndre Swift, but my team wasn't really a contender. And I gave my DeAndre Swift to the contender team. And my rebuilding team got back 2 injured running backs in Derrick Henry and Travis Etienne, and an underperforming Cortland Sutton, along with I got some other player back who I can't
Sutton's
remember.
one of my favorite buy lows.
Yes. So to me, why this makes sense for both teams and why you should be trying to do something similar, be it if it's with Cam Akers or something too, is I got Logan Thomas back. That's what I was looking for. Why it makes sense for the contender is, and I'm only advocating for this if you're in the top 3 of your league in points for specifically, but you also feel pretty comfortable that you're going to make the playoffs, is if you're a contender right now, those guys aren't really doing you much help, especially the ones injured like Travis Etienne or Cam Akers, who you're not even sure what they're going to be when they come back. In return, you're getting that top 5, top 10 running back, whoever you're looking to trade for, who will certainly help you. That's just so many added points that you didn't have. And that makes you like a force. And what you do, which isn't realized with this trade, is you force other teams to make trades to try and combat you. If you're a top 3 contender right now, and you just made that trade and you just added another top running back to your roster, those other 2 top teams are now looking at your, reinforced roster, and they're going to themselves, I have to go trade for those kind of players now. And that makes a market, that makes them have to pay higher, that makes them hurt their teams more. It's kind of like that guerrilla warfare kind of strategy. Now, if you're on the rebuilding side, I know I like that myself. I came up with that just now.
Dude, we got guerrilla warfare going on in our fantasy leagues this whole time.
Look, you guys haven't been in the trenches like me.
No, everything you're saying is completely true.
Yeah. The rebuilding side, I specifically targeted these players that I all like, that I think are going to gain value at just by the fact of them getting healthy. Like they have all seen a decrease in their value simply because they're injured. And while I really like Cortland Sutton, I really like Derrick Henry, and I don't know what's on the screen and why we're laughing, Frank. But
just guerrilla warfare. That is hilarious.
Look, dude, if you're not in the trenches with me, you're against me. You can get in my foxhole, Frank.
He's a big guerrilla warfare guy.
It knocked me off track completely. But where I was going is these guys, these Derrick Henrys, these Travis Etiennes, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, yes, but like he's definitely going to be like a really hard one to get. They've all lost value simply because they're hurt, and they've lost to the point of they just need to return and they will get value. Like they will increase, and you could trade them. Now, I probably would just hold them actually through the NFL draft. I would wait until you actually get to the regular season. I don't think it makes any sense to try and trade them before the NFL draft, because those pick prices are going to be so high, and people are going to, like Frank said, trying to win the championship in the offseason. I think you just hold them straight through to the regular season, and then you try and make your trades, because that's when people are really going to be like, oh, like I'm just a Derrick Henry away from competing, or, oh, Laviska Shenault didn't work out for me. Let me go try and trade for Travis Etienne. I bet he'll fill in that role, kind of thing. And to me, I think that's the perfect scenario for both teams. The one team that's trying to contend, the one team that's trying to rebuild. You're both building value in separate ways. And ultimately, it's for the championship. So if you even lose a little bit of value going for the contending, banners fly forever. Unless you're Jake and win in a COVID year, and then it doesn't count. It's a Mickey Mouse race. All right, sorry.
Coming from a guy that doesn't even have one.
I don't want to hear it. Up there in my rafters has 3 top 5 players ranked on keep trade cut. that can fly for the next 2 or 3 weeks until it changes.
Oh my goodness.
All right. I know. I hope people were able to follow along with what I was saying. I don't know if you guys were.
Yeah.
I guess the only real risk with buying the injured players is if that team like kind of doubles up in the draft.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it's the same with any team really. Like Derrick Henry, I think is just Derrick Henry. He's kind of a anomaly in the fact that I think Derrick Henry is fine. Like Travis Etienne is one that I'd certainly be concerned about. I mean, James Robinson exists. He's still going to exist. I think he'll carve his own role.
The problem
But to me, go ahead, Jake.
I mean, the problem with all these guys is that if you're buying them with the expectation that they're going to return to even a percentage of themselves prior. But in the case of Etienne, we haven't even seen him in the NFL. Like there's a lot of risk moving here, but there's a lot of reward. It's a big risk reward play here because if they come back and they're the same guy, if Cam Akers comes back and he's the same guy, you just got a top 5 dynasty back for almost nothing.
Well, yeah, and here's where if you're in the 3rd and 20 league, I think you should cover your ears and don't listen to this because this might be what I'm going to employ. But I just think you don't even have to worry about that. You just wait until the regular season comes, and then you just trade them before.
So you're just straight on stonking them.
Yeah, you trade them before they're bad. Yeah. I mean, it's like I don't know.
For example, like whether or not you think Cam Akers is going to come back healthy, if you trade for him now, then training camp comes and they say he's getting first team reps and he's back practicing, his value is going to go up right then. Like,
oh, dude, when he catches that first pass against air, oh my days!
Once that video comes out,
exactly,
his value goes up by at least a 2nd round pick.
And look, like I don't know anything. I mean, we brought in guerrilla warfare. I'm about to bring in crypto right here, where it's just like all those pump and dump coins. Like
I love it. I love it.
You only lose if you hold. You only lose if you hold overnight because eventually it's gonna crash. So with these players, you only lose if you hold them into the regular season and they don't do anything. But you just wait for that training camp. You just wait for the hype of. There's going to be Dynasty Nerds and DLF and all these other places being like, these are the targets that you should buy low on, and then
once they're a consensus buy low, they are no longer a buy low.
Exactly.
Dude, I'm just gonna tweet saying that I'm at the Rams training camp and just start pumping Cam Akers. I'm gonna buy all the Cam Akers. I'm gonna be literally on the other side of the country, just like, dude, Cam Akers easily the best player on the field, just every day.
Yeah, Bionics. He's like what's Arnold Schwarzenegger? Why am I blanking on this? Terminator. Yeah. Cam Akers is the new Terminator out here with his new Achilles just destroying everyone on the field. Aaron Donald just got bench pressed.
He's destroying so much air right now, guys. RB1.
All right. Anything else we wanted to hit on with this injury scenario?
I do like the idea of if you're a rebuilding team, like kind of like what you mentioned, going and buying those injured backs. I know we kind of talk about the ones that kind of have more risk to them. And I know Dobbins' price is still high, but man, I still think Dobbins is going to be that good. We're even at the slightly higher price than those guys. Right now, he's around what, RB 15? Yeah,
17.
Loon, you're breaking the dumping the whatever the crypto.
He's the one guy
here.
I'm not dumping. Yeah, I'm just buying.
You're breaking the rule here, Loon.
Because I think he's easily by mid-season next year be considered a top 7, top 8 dynasty back. I think he's that talented. ACL injuries are one that athletes in recent years have just come back fine from. It's not kind of something we're dealing with in ETN's injury where it might take a little bit more than 1 year, or Akers with the Achilles. Like Dobbins, I feel a lot safer about. Obviously, that's factored into the price. But if someone who's in the playoff race or contention race has him, I'd be offering like win now pieces and picks trying to get him. Because I think by the time he comes back next year, he's going to jump into the top 10 dynasty backs.
No respect for AJ. You guys moist not know yet. Lol. I don't know what that means. Does anyone know what that
in
means?
The chat? Was this someone we know or
Jackson G?
Jackson G. AJ Dillon?
Yeah, I gotta assume it's AJ Dillon. I mean,
what has he done for us to respect him? Like the Packers just gave Aaron Jones
already
a
talked
big
about him. We already talked about him. I want to bring up.
If they were so high on him, they wouldn't have paid Jones.
How far down the chain do you go? Because we've only been talking about the top running backs, and I think that like buying any of them at a good price at this discounted value is a good move if they do or don't pan out. But what about guys like
Gus Edwards?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of that tier. Is it just firms stay away? I mean, there's a whole list of them, like KJ Hamler, DJ Chark, Juju. Like, what about these? I mean, we're kind of going all over the place, but is there like a line, or are you just buying everyone at a discount?
All right. Well, I mean,
There are a few
It's
guys
very
who got
circumstantial.
injuries throughout the year that I kind of like. I feel Jacobs and Sanders I still like his talents, and I feel like
those
both of
guys
their-
are gonna. Sanders.
Their
both of their
careers
values
got
are
injured more so than their
plummeted.
body.
I don't know. I mean, Sanders is hurt right now. Jacobs has missed a bunch of games this year. I feel like right now both their guys' values are lower than it should be. I'm higher on both of them. Who else has been some of like the major injuries or people?
Yeah, but I was
a lot of
talking more
times.
about the philosophy more so than just buying players whose values are down.
I don't think it works as well with the lower tier players because the price change is not going to be that much. So you might buy, a Gus Edwards for let's say a late third, and you sell him for what, a high third. Like the profit margins on a player of that magnitude is not going to be the same as the profit margins on a guy like Cam Akers, Dobbins, all those higher end guys. Because if you can get those even for one late first, you could probably flip it to a mid to a high first, maybe even multiple picks, maybe even a better player. There's just way more you can do with a guy that's going to be that highly ranked if he is healthy.
Those are also the players that can completely get destroyed by the draft.
Correct.
In terms of
It's
whoever gets drafted to the team could just wipe their
Okay,
value.
we're just sticking to the high ones then. All right, we can move on to the mock then.
All right, wrapping it up with the mock. I like this. It's a way too early. Well, maybe not way too early. Devi 2022 mock. All those picks that you just started trading for because you're no longer a contender and you're looking to rebuild. These are the guys that you should be looking for. I think we had pretty good mock drafts in the past. Maybe just don't listen to Lounis, who picked Kyle Trask in the first round last year. Other than that, solid. Kicking it off.
To be fair to him, though, that was based off of that mock draft where Kyle Trask was projected to be the starting quarterback.
That's true.
He was supposed to be the starter in Chicago.
It was just a segment. We were just
all right. I just like messing with Lounis because he doesn't normally get it.
But Lounis, you are going with a new quarterback here. You got a new number one.
Matt Corral, quarterback from Ole Miss, is the number one pick. I just feel like, one, he's the safest. I feel the best about. Like, I know people may argue he may not have like as high as rushing upside as some other QBs, but he's the guy I feel most confident about in terms of being a long-time starter in the NFL. He's going to be the first quarterback drafted in this draft class. In Superflex League, I just feel like it's like the safest and best pick to go with.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much disagreement here.
His rushing production is pretty good too, especially when you compare him to some of the other top quarterbacks that have come out in recent years. Like he's definitely at he's not the craziest runner. He's not like Kyler Murray or anything, but I mean, I'm pretty sure he was leading the SEC in touchdowns for a little bit. He's still probably near the top. He's got a good arm. Yeah, I agree. Good number one pick here in Matt Corral.
Yeah. Rolling into pick 2 was me. I took the RB1 in this draft class. It's Breece Hall from Iowa State. He's just an absolute monster. He does everything, and he's going to be a productive bell cow for an NFL team moving forward. And I can't wait to see what he does, honestly.
Yeah, I was pretty upset you took him there. I mean, I wanted him. I agree. Bell cow. These running backs do kind of more profile as bell cow running backs than last year's, specifically, ETN, and even in my opinion, somewhat Najee. But I mean, we've seen Najee be a bell cow currently, so who knows?
Wait, real quick. I think the biggest thing that you like to see about Breece Hall is that his receiving production has increased every year. It seems like. He had 23 catches in 2019 and 2020 as a freshman and a sophomore. And then this year, through 10 games, 2 less than those previous years, he already has 31 catches. So he could easily get up to 35, 40 catches. And that's pretty damn good for a college running back, a guy that's like 6'2", 220. Like he is really looking like a prototypical RB1 that can produce early.
Well, speaking of those,
he's going to be a workhorse.
Yeah, speaking of those kind of running backs, I'll just follow it up with my running back 2 on the board, pick 3 overall. That's Isiah Spiller, running back from Texas A&M. He also has, I think, 25 receptions on the season. He's shown that he can catch the ball not too much, but like he's definitely capable of it. He has 914 yards on the year, but what I really like is 6'1", 215, another bell cow kind of running back prototype, if you will. To me, these are the clear-cut two running backs. That's kind of why I'm willing to pay up more for these guys, because I like them much more, and I think this is where the tier break is compared to, I think Matt Corral is the clear quarterback one, and then after that, there's a tier break, and then there's a bunch of guys below that, at least until the draft decides. So I decide with the third pick, I'd rather just pay up and get the second running back in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, if you look early in the draft, throughout the entire 20 picks that we did for this mock, there's a lot of very prototypical size for these positions that you would want. So I had back-to-back 4 and 5. We snaked it. And I was kind of choosing between 4 players. And the 4 players were Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, David Bell, and Kenneth Walker. I think that those were the guys. And I guess you could throw Pickens in there. I didn't want to take Pickens just because of the injury and the uncertainty, I guess. I decided to go with Treylon Burks at 4 and then Garrett Wilson at 5. A little bit because if I were drafting today, I think that these are 2 very safe prospects. I think that they're pretty surefire first round caliber receivers. Not necessarily saying that they will go first round, but a little bit of that is dictated by what the teams need. I think there's a very good chance they both do, though. And they just check a lot of the boxes. Treylon Burks to me is like a kind of like an Amari Cooper. And then Garrett Wilson is just, dude, you watch the guy play and he is dicing people up all game. His routes are phenomenal.
He kind of reminds me of Calvin Ridley.
Yes, he does. He has really polished route running and good feet. So even though I'm not a huge proponent of drafting receivers high in rookie drafts, dude, these 2 guys at this part in the process, I think are really safe. And if I was drafting today, I'd be pretty happy about landing them at 4 and 5.
Is there ever a scenario where you put Garrett Wilson above Treylon Burks, or is Treylon Burks your clear cut?
Yeah, I haven't really ground the film on it. I think that David Bell is pretty damn close. And then Kenneth Walker, right? I think that Kenneth Walker, if he gets good draft capital and checks a lot of the boxes, just because he has that running back and if he's a decent receiver at all, and he gets a good landing spot, dude, he can easily shoot up even past Isiah Spiller or Breece Hall. Because dude, there's going to be a huge push on these running backs and quarterbacks as the season progresses. It happens every year.
All right, I'm back on the clock, and like Frank just alluded to, I picked David Bell. He's finally starting to get more hype, and the hype that I think he deserves. It only took him torching both Michigan State and Ohio State.
I feel like every time I check a Purdue game, I just look at some of the final stats, and it's David Bell 12 catches, 217 yards. I'm just holy shit.
Yeah, well, what's crazy is he's been doing this for 3 years now, against strong opponents. I think his first breakout game was against Minnesota, but then he also did against Iowa. He's done against Iowa every year. He's just destroyed Iowa. What's interesting is he plays for Purdue. And while I would have loved to see him and Rondale Moore playing together and see what they could have done together, due to injuries and whatnot, they didn't really ever play on the field a whole lot at the same time. So I don't know. But to me, David Bell,
quarterback was kind of trash.
Yeah, quarterback also trash.
That doesn't help.
Yeah, but I wish we had WWE type intros, because right now there'd be my intro music in the pop, because Tinder Girl JT is back. David Bell, 6'2", 205. He's just the prototypical alpha kind of wide receiver. David Bell, to me, I do have him above Garrett Wilson currently. He's my wide receiver 2, right behind Treylon Burks. But I mean, to me, with the top 4 wide receivers, I don't think you could go wrong.
I mean, fact of the matter is that if you're landing any one of these 3 at picks 6, 7, 8, which is a very realistic chance that one of them will be on the board at those picks, that is nice. That feels really good.
Yeah, it's the constant wide receivers kind of get slept on in the draft, because I'm sure there's going to be some quarterbacks that we mentioned soon that are going to go higher than these.
If Sam Howell goes top 10 in the draft, I mean, you can only imagine what that does to his draft stock.
I feel like he's going to be the guy that like Tao is going to be the guy that like just rises the most like post after like the regular season. Like, you know how people like, for example, last college season, I feel like everyone had Justin Fields as QB2, but then like kind of during like the pre-draft process and everything, Zach Wilson rose and Trey Lance rose. I feel like Howell's going to be that guy that rises a lot.
Well, Jake, who's your pick at 7?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you guys should just talk about him for me, because at pick 7, I did go with Sam Howell. I mean, he's just a prototypical quarterback here. He's 6'2", 220, has the big arm. I mean, we saw him produce big time last year when he had the likes of Diami Brown and Daz Newsome at wide receiver here. And Javonte Williams behind him. Obviously, that's a very, very good offense at UNC, and he's struggled a little bit this year without those guys. But that's just what happens when you lose pretty much your entire starting offense and you stick around. But I expect him to go in the top 10 of the draft, and at that point, taking a top 10 overall pick in the NFL draft at pick 7, especially at the quarterback position, I think it's a great pick here.
Yeah.
Take a shot for every time we say the word prototypical.
And another thing to touch, I've said this before with picking quarterbacks early in rookie drafts, is that if it doesn't pan out, you can always have the forgivers. If you turn around and Sam Howell has a very iffy, very interception prone rookie year, and you go, I'm out. You could always find someone that'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a contender. I'll take him for a late first round pick, or I'll give you, an older quarterback in a second. Like, you could always flip them around, just because quarterbacks maintain that value in Superflex leagues so much.
It's apology season.
Look at I mean, it's not even I mean, it could just be like, for example, look at Zach Wilson has 4 touchdowns to 9 picks this year, and he still has a ton of value, and for a good reason, because he's extremely talented. I mean, I know. Listen, I still like Zach Wilson too. He's talented, but I just mean to say, like, they don't have to do well their rookie year, and people are still going to believe in the talent. So I'm with you, Jake, and I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought you would just said how. My bad. What is it? So number 8, I went with Kenneth Walker. He's my RB3 behind the guys I went earlier, Hall and Spiller. He's just every single game against any kind of defense, he just makes plays. He just completely made a joke out of the Michigan defense, as he has with defenses all year. He's a machine at breaking tackles. I think this year he started to show his receiving abilities a little bit more. I don't know how common this has been used as a player comp, but he reminds me a bit of David Montgomery. I guess just more like the ridiculous number of broken tackles was like the thing that kind of made me think of Montgomery, because that was his biggest thing coming out of college too, how many tackles he broke on a consistent basis. That's the same thing with Kenneth Walker, and I think he's going to be someone who's a starting running back once they go into the NFL, maybe if not week 1, then extremely soon. Well worth the top 10 pick, top 8, and I mean, at 108 getting Kenneth Walker, I think, is really good value. It goes to show the late first round this year is kind of loaded. At 109, I went Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty. I feel like he's kind of like the ultimate wild card at quarterback in this draft class. Like right now, you could tell me he ended up going number like 10 overall, and you could tell me he went like early mid-second round, and of like the real draft, and neither I'd be surprised at. It's going to come down to how like a lot of these teams think he can switch over to the NFL level. He didn't play well against Ole Miss, but to be fair to him, neither did his O-line. And I think part of what kind of brings him this high in fantasy is that rushing upside that he offers. He has the most rushing upside out of any of those top QBs this draft class, where if he is a starter on a team, he's going to get you points just off of that. Jake, were you about to say something?
I was just going to say that, like, all of these quarterbacks, whether it's Cordarelle, Howell, Willis, a few of the guys that we'll touch on coming up in a minute, but quarterbacks are one of those positions that their draft position in a rookie draft is heavily influenced by their draft capital in the NFL draft. Just because, JT's run the numbers. He said if you're not a top 15 pick at quarterback, like the percentage that you're a franchise quarterback is just very low. It's just, and that's just something you got to factor in when evaluating these quarterbacks here, because more teams are more likely to move on quick if they put less draft capital into them.
And I mean, I'll say now, if Malik Willis goes top 15, top 12 in the real NFL draft, he's not going to be available. This late in the
He's going to
rookie
be a
draft.
top 5 pick, guaranteed.
He's a top 5
rookie
pick,
draft.
1,000%.
Yeah,
He's going to be
I passed on him. I passed on him because I don't believe he was going to be a first round pick. But like you said, if he's a first, I mean, even if he's in the first round, I don't even think he needs to be a top 15 pick. If he's in the first round, he's going to get hyped because, like you said, his rushing ability. No one's going to deny the fact that this dude is absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. Like, I do think, I've said it before, I do think he is on that Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray-esque tier of running ability.
And if he gets drafted in the late first, that's equivalent to Lamar. They're going to have those kind of comparisons. He'll end up getting bumped up.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Lake.
Oh, I am up again. And I took a guy that I actually have as my wide receiver 2 in this class. And I got him all the way down here at pick 10. That's George Pickens. The big thing with George Pickens is obviously he has not played a game this year. He's coming off an ACL injury. But prior to that, he's been one of the most dominant receivers in college football for the past 2 seasons. As a true freshman, as a sophomore at Georgia, he's been incredible. I think he's just kind of playing... You know, we've seen players come back from the ACL injury. It's not anything too crazy nowadays with today's medicine. And I think he's kind of milking it. I do think if he could come back if he really wanted to. I'm going to be honest. I think he's milking it. I'm going to be honest. I think he could play. I think he's kind of taking a page out of
questions Pickens' toughness.
No, I think he's taking a page
I mean, I'd sit out too.
I think he's taking a page out of the Jamar Chase book here and saying, hey, I already have my draft capital. I've been proven I'm a dominant wide receiver. I fit the build. I'm 6'2", 190. Like, I'm a big guy. I'm just going to take this year to finish my rehab and prepare for the NFL draft.
But I think that's the main concern that I have with Pickens is I want to see the NFL teams draft him high just because we haven't seen him, right? Like, if he goes high in the draft around these other top receivers, then I'll consider him at like that 4 to 5 picks I was at. But I think that's really good value at pick 10 for you if this were an actual draft.
Yeah.
And we can all agree that there's arbitrage value right now. If the NFL draft capital matches everything and he declares and everything goes right, that Pickens is probably going to be going earlier than 10. Or if he's around 10, you're like, fuck yeah, bro. Like, I'm chilling.
My issues with Pickens are I think people have overrated how much he's dominated. He hasn't dominated as much in the stats sense as the likes of Treylon Burks and David Bell. And what my pick that I guess I'll just move on to right now was doing this year, Drake London, who I have ranked above Pickens. Then my other reason,
the wide receiver at a USC.
Yeah, wide receiver at USC. I'll get into him in a second. But my thing is with Pickens is I'm thinking he stays another year. I just think I think he's gonna go into the 2023 class. I don't agree with it either, Jake. I think it's gonna hurt him like it hurt another receiver that's going to be talked about in a later part of this draft. I just think if you're draft eligible, you should go. Like, if you think you're getting drafted in the first 2 days, first 3 rounds, you should go. And to me, I don't think George Pickens is, so I'm just keeping him.
You don't think he's going to be a first 2-day pick?
No, I think if he ends up going, he probably will be, but I don't think he will go. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think he should go if he's going to be a first 2-day pick. But for some reason, like one of the players we're going to talk about later, they just don't go, and that really hurts their value to me. So moving on, though, like I just alluded to, Drake London, receiver, USC. He played with Michael Pittman in his freshman year. He was pretty solid. He's tall. He's big. He's 6'5", 205, I think, 210. I don't know. I could pull it up.
Red zone monster.
6'5", 210, red zone monster. I think I saw from what I noticed from watching him on film, he always lined up on like the left side of the field. I don't know if that's like true. That might just be me doing fake facts here, but that was something interesting that I saw that like I didn't really understand why, and wish I got more in-depth reasoning to that. To me, he's my wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. He's close neck and neck with Garrett Wilson. I just think we hadn't seen someone dominate his share of targets, like his team share of targets, like we have with Drake London this year. Drake London had, looking at his stats, 88 receptions before he just destroyed his ankle, and that's going to be the issue. He destroyed his ankle. It was like a Dak-esque injury. I don't think it was as bad, but he is going to have to rehab it. He is going to have to come back from it. He probably won't be testing for the combine and whatnot. I still think he'll be a first 2-round draft pick. And to me, that's enough to keep him up there. So Drake London, what am I, pick 11?
Yeah.
Pick 12. Yeah, pick 11. Drake London, pick 11. I really like the value there.
I've said it before. He reminds me of Mike Evans just a lot.
Mm-hmm. I mean, dude, like you're looking through. So my pick 12, I took Kyron Williams, the running back out of Notre Dame, mainly just because I think I have him around in the conversation of these other top backs. So getting him at pick 12 just felt like too good to pass up. And then I took one of my personally favorite quarterbacks in the draft, Carson Strong, at 13. But this just goes to show you, before we even get, like, we can even take just the top 12 picks. This first round is good, right? And especially when you start putting faces and names to the picks, like, there's a lot of upside in all 12, 13 of these players. And there's still guys that we're going to go into that also have a ton of upside and a ton of potential. So the whole 2022 class sucking ass, I don't know. It's starting out. This is looking pretty freaking good.
I think what people say when they mean that is they don't have, the Jamar Chase, the Kyle Pitts. Like, they don't have that super, super top end, players that everyone wants and everyone thinks are just can't miss players. Because, obviously we all looking at, Breece Hall, Isiah Spiller, Treylon Burks, even Matt Corral to an extent. And we go, yeah, they're the best players in this draft. But then if you go and you put them back in next year's class, where do they, or last year's class with those other guys, with Trevor Lawrence and the other guys I mentioned, like, where do they rank among them? And I think that's where you start to get the bad draft class label here.
Yeah, but the problem with that, though, is that seems to have stemmed mainly to the late 2022 first round picks. More so, like, if you have an early first round pick, you're never just like, oh, this sucks, I'm going to throw it in the trash. Like, I feel like the people that took the bait on that, it's because they were a contender and they're saying to themselves, oh, this isn't a great draft class. My pick 110, 111 is not going to be as good as last year, so I'd rather trade it away. Not saying that you automatically lost the trade. It's just, dude, I'm looking, there's 14, 15 players that I could see myself taking with a first round pick. As of right now, obviously the draft and everything is going to change things, but there's a lot of players.
I think the later half is better than most people believe, at least in its current form. I don't know what the NFL draft and everything will change about it, but to me, it just doesn't compare to 2020 and 2021, which is what hurts it. And then it has 2023 behind it, which everyone is hyping up as well. But if you take 2022 and you compare it to most other years, I think it's on par. Like, I think it's a fine draft class. It's not a bad draft class. But when you're comparing it to the two before and the one after that, allegedly what we're going to get, that's where it kind of falls short. And that's where the perceived value drops.
No, this is why I was saying a couple episodes ago that I wanted to go out there and start collecting the second round picks, because the more people start looking into the class and the more people like us, other podcasts, there's thousands of them, are going to start doing 2022 mock drafts, especially with the trade deadlines coming up and people starting to gear content towards rebuilding teams. Like, dude, the cat's going to be out of the bag that this is a pretty damn good second round and late first round. And these picks that may have been undervalued, you're going to see their keep trade cuts value increase, the consensus value increase, the perceived value is going to increase. And this is exactly around the time where these picks start gaining a lot of value. And once you start wanting a guy like a Chris Olave, oh, dude, I want to get him in the mid-second round. Well, everyone wants him in the mid-second round except for JT. But you get the fucking point.
Yeah. He's a Blitnikoff finalist, actually, came out, which I completely
disagree with. Who is the Blitnikoff finalist this year?
I don't know. There's like
Jameson Williams is one.
Drake London's up there. I don't think David Bell made it onto there. I could look again, but
That's crazy if you did.
yeah. It's a fake award. I don't know. I mean, Jamar Chase.
Yeah, awards don't matter. If you're drafting based off of awards, just choose any other stat.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. So, Frank, did you have anything to add about?
No, we've talked about Kyron Williams and Carson Strong on previous podcasts.
Yeah. Okay. So at pick 14, I'm taking Zach Charbonnet. I think that's how you pronounce it. I always try. I don't know if I ever get it right.
Charbonnet?
Probably not that. Running back UCLA. I don't know. To me, normally I'm not one of those guys that is for players that didn't produce in their first 2 years and didn't really do anything, and that's kind of what we saw from Zach Charbonnet. But I'm enacting this rule that I started this year, and it's the Michigan rule, and it's just any prospect that goes to Michigan. It's the Adam Gase effect, but for college. Just anything that happens in Michigan doesn't count. I mean,
what happens in Michigan stays in Michigan.
Yeah. Not that
Donovan get drafted by the Lions.
Well, you can kind of guess how that's going to go.
I don't know. That's a future JT issue. They only have a certain amount of picks. And not that Donovan Peoples-Jones is like a world beater or anything, but he was trashed so hard, and then he came out and like he's fine and everything. Like Nico Collins, I still like, but Zach Charbonnet transferred from. He was a highly touted high school prospect. I think either 4-star or 5-star. Went to Michigan, didn't really do a whole lot. Got stuck in the depth chart, then transferred to UCLA. And at least at the start of his season, he was looking really good. I mean, he's kind of fallen off a little bit, the past 3 or so weeks that he's played. But he's still someone that I think has that prototypical size. He is 6'1", 220. I just think I don't know what happened there, Frank. Oh, prototypical size, yes.
That's another one.
Power hour. 6'1", 220. The 3rd and 20 power hour. 6'1", 220, Zach Charbonnet. I like him more than Kenneth Walker. I'm pretty sure that at this point that's a hot take. He's my running back 3 in this class. As long as he's a top 3 pick, which is not guaranteed, not top 3 pick, a top 3 round pick. Yeah, first 3 rounds. I'd be scooping him up.
Nice.
So that means you have him over Kyron Williams too.
I'm low on Kyron Williams.
I don't know. I like Charbonnet. I wouldn't take him in the early second. I think that I'd rather go for one of the other receivers. But like you said, if he gets a second round pick to his name, and with the highly touted recruit and the fact that he's showing up, like he's gonna get hyped and he'll go around.
I'm kind of in between you two. I would take him in the early second, but he is my RB5.
I spilt water all over me. I'm not happy.
It's the prototypical size that did that.
This power hour is getting to me.
Speaking of prototypical size, the guy I took at 15 is 6'4", 215 at the quarterback position. Big arm, plays for a top 5 team in college football right now. That's Desmond Ritter of Cincinnati.
Solo Bengals?
Sell all Bengals. No, buy all Bengals. Sell all Ravens. But anyways, he's a quarterback that I think has a big arm. He provides a rushing floor similar to Malik Willis, where he'll put up some touchdowns and some rushing yards that'll really help his fantasy points. Overall, he's another guy that I think is going to sneak into the first round of the NFL draft. I'm a big Desmond Ritter believer. I know he fell to QB5 in this draft, which I have him at QB3 behind Cordarelle and Howell. So at pick 15 here, I think it's pretty much a steal for me, honestly.
I like him. Again, it's the same thing with all these quarterbacks. Where they end up getting drafted and leading up to the draft is going to be such kind of the ultimate deciding factor on where a lot of these guys go. But I'm a fan of Desmond Ritter. I know a lot of people are low on him just because he's in the American Conference.
Yeah, that's the big knock on him. Is he doesn't play anybody. That's the big knock on him. But
he did beat Notre Dame.
I'm taking the JT stance here. I want to see the NFL buy into him. I haven't seen anything out of Ritter in particular that I'm willing to start shelling out relevant draft capital to pick him up against the NFL, against the grain.
Obviously, that I said it earlier. The draft capital for quarterbacks is the most important thing that goes into this. Because if he falls to a third round pick, obviously he's not being taken at pick 15 overall. It's just what it is.
Remember
All
when
right, Loon.
Spencer Rattler would have been here?
Spencer
He
Rattler
would
would
have
have
been a
been
top
one
5
overall.
pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Things change. All right. Go ahead, Lounis.
So at pick 6, I'm taking Chris Olave from Ohio State. I know JT automatically hates him because he's a senior.
He's
and
a
he
wide
stayed next
receiver,
year.
by the way.
Well, did that not say wide receiver?
No, you did not.
Oh, my fault.
It's
He's
all
a
right.
wide receiver. But I will, to JT's point, he was producing in his first 2 years of college. Yeah, especially his sophomore season was when he kind of really broke out. He would have been, where was he predicted to go last year? He would have been kind of a second round pick receiver? Not in
think so.
fantasy drafts, like in the NFL draft.
Well,
Yeah.
Conspiracy JT thinks that the reason he stayed behind was because he probably wouldn't have been a first 2-round pick. And his agent probably told him, you should stay another year, play out.
I think he was getting like Rondell Moore-esque buzz, though. Maybe a little bit less.
I feel around the second.
All right, mid second. I mean, maybe he was trying
I think
to get
more
into
so
the
like
first.
late second. If we're gonna combine, around like Dwayne Eskridge and Tutu Atwell, I think he's definitely going somewhere around there.
Yeah, I thought above those guys, but even though he's here as a senior, he's playing cross-side Wilson. Obviously, Wilson we're all a little bit higher on, but I still really like him. I think he kind of reminds me of like a actually healthy Will Fuller. I think he's going to be someone that teams can draft as a deep threat, a vertical target, and he still looked really good his senior year. Obviously, the quarterback this year. What were you going to say, JT?
That's where I gotta disagree with you, Lounis, and that's where I'm.
You don't think he's looked good this year?
He's the third wide receiver on the team now. He hasn't been able to hold off Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yes, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and the other problem with him too is that you just haven't really had that real season of dominance from Olave. He's had a bunch of like okay seasons. Sophomore year, 13 games, he puts up 840 yards and 12 touchdowns. Like, okay, that's good. Junior year, okay, COVID. He was phenomenal last year. I'll give him that, right? 7 games, 729 yards, 7 touchdowns. But then this year, he's not really following it up at all. So it's like kind of bringing it back, baby, bringing this back. The roller coaster performances, and it just gets a little bit nerve wracking.
I'm still a believer in him. I think I don't know. He's just shown too much to me over the past couple of years. And is this going to be another McLaurin situation?
At pick 16 or around this general part of the draft, I agree with you. I think it's worth the pick. But I think your next pick is actually the steal of the draft. And I'm kind of mad that you picked him up.
When I was looking at them, I kind of wanted to flip them, but they were back-to-back anyway. Jameson Williams has been just like a stud. I feel like wasn't Mechie kind of what people expected to be the wide receiver 1 this year?
Yeah, Jameson Williams, a wide receiver out of Alabama.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. I feel like coming into the year, people expected Mechie to kind of like step up and be that number, but Jameson Williams has looked a million times better than him. He's just been dominant. One of those finalists for the award. I'll sound smart. Prototypical wide receiver size.
Yes, he's a transfer from Ohio State. He didn't get a ton of playing time at Ohio State. So transfers to Alabama, and now in his junior season has absolutely exploded. He's got in 10 games 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. One of the best receivers right now in college football.
And just I don't know if you guys watched the Bama LSU game the other week, but he just completely dominated. He had 10 for 160 and a touchdown against LSU. And I'm pretty sure. And then just the past couple weeks, he's even been helping his draft stock even more. I think even last weekend, I think he had an insanely good game, like 180 yards.
I think there's a good chance we start talking about him in the conversation with the other top receivers.
I was going to say, I think by the time like the draft buzz really starts coming up, he's going to be a late first round pick in these fantasy drafts.
Yeah.
These guys will switch up and down, but I think he's going to test really well. I think he's going to continue to play well for the rest of the season, especially if Bama gets into that Final Four and he has a chance to show out against someone like the really top tier teams. that's just going to only help him more. Kind of like what happened with Devontae Smith last year. Obviously, I don't think he's on that high level, but I mean, pro ceiling, actually, you never know. But I'm a huge fan of him.
Rolling into the next pick, 18 overall. That was me again.
Yes.
I took a very interesting prospect in Wandell Robinson, receiver from Kentucky. He's a transfer from Nebraska, I believe. And he was really a running back at Nebraska almost. And, he's really switched over to wide receiver full time here at Kentucky. And he's really produced in that role for a pretty surprising Kentucky football team here. He's had a lot of big plays and a lot of explosive plays, and I think he's just a piece that fits in an NFL offense as that deep threat, big play wide receiver. Can hand him an end around or do some funky things with him out of the backfield, just because he does have that experience as pretty much a running back. I think he had 80 carries at Nebraska his sophomore season. His freshman year at Nebraska, he had 88 rushing attempts. So he has a lot of experience at a bunch of different positions here, and I think he's just a guy that NFL teams are going to get creative with, and it's an interesting pick late in the second round here.
Yeah, I like Wandell Robinson. Originally, I had him higher. I switched him out for Zach Charbonnet. So you kind of jumped me here. I think for me, he's actually my wide receiver 5 in this draft, behind the Burks, Bell, Wilson, London. I think I have Wandell Robinson currently as wide receiver 5. Yeah,
he's been incredibly productive.
Yeah, he's got really good yards per route run, which is I think a pretty good predictive stat. So it's intriguing. To me, I have someone, just kind of at the end of this draft, who I was willing to take a shot on, and that's Justin Ross.
He's one of my favorite picks in this mock.
Yeah, it's a weird one, right? Because what's his injury? He's dealing with he has
a back injury.
Back
injury. Spine injury kind of thing,
which was potentially career threatening, and it's something that probably has knocked a lot of scouts away from him, I think. But if he manages to get into the top 3 rounds, I really like Justin Ross. Obviously had Trevor Lawrence as his quarterback. He's out of Clemson. I don't know if I mentioned that, but in his freshman season, he had 1,000 yards receiving, which is very rare for any college prospect.
He was arguably one of Trevor Lawrence's top options there. Even with T. Higgins and all those.
When he was a freshman, I was gonna say when he was a freshman, I thought he was kind of better than Higgins when he was just coming in as a freshman. It's not. And the yardage that we're saying isn't even just a result of playing with Trevor Lawrence and a cross-eyed Higgins. I remember the national championship. He was mossing every Alabama corner. He was just out jumping them, out playing them to the ball. It's just his health is now the ultimate question.
Yeah, it just sucks that he's been a part of this abysmal Clemson offense this year.
This season's looked pretty bad. This season, he hasn't really done a whole lot. I don't think he's had more than 5 catches this year. But to be fair, this whole Clemson offense in its entirety looks pretty terrible.
Yeah, if anyone's going to get a pass for being on a terrible team, I mean, Justin Ross might be the guy. So there's so many factors that you're right. He's a good prospect, and all of these concerns I think are going to be priced in by the Dynasty community and by the NFL. I really don't think that we're going to see an NFL team, barring anything pretty crazy, take a shot on Justin Ross. Honestly, I don't think in the first 2 days. I think he's going to be a day 3 pick. Maybe round 3, someone in that comp pick or in the middle decides to take a shot on him, or he just starts balling out in the combine and all that shit. I feel like I've seen NFL teams fade good players for less.
Yeah.
It's going to come down to when he goes into practice with a lot of teams, whether their medical team clears him.
Maybe he has to go to the. I mean, if he got that medical excuse, does he get to be invited to the Senior Bowl or something? Maybe something like that could help him. One of those bowl kind of stuff.
I think his draft stock's going to be dependent on when teams bring him in and their medical team checks him out, and then they have their own evaluation on it.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me. I know this is a different sport. Do you guys remember in the NBA draft, Michael Porter Jr. a couple years ago?
His
Yeah.
back issues.
Yeah, like he was someone who was viewed as a top 3 talent, and like half the teams in the NBA medical staff didn't clear him, and then half, like, or I guess maybe even less, like a third did. So people had no idea where he was going to end up getting drafted.
Where'd he end up getting drafted?
He's a top 2 talent. He went 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he still went first round, but
not to pile on.
NBA is
but-
also different, but yeah.
Yeah, Justin Ross is also he's out for I think the remainder of the season. And is getting
Yeah, he has
surgery
like
on
a
his foot.
fractured foot or something.
Yeah, so I mean, who knows when he'll be healthy and ready to go.
It's just
He's
a
getting
lot of
surgery.
injury. It's a lot of injury
Yeah.
concerns on one player.
I mean, it could be why am I blanking on
it's a
his
shame.
name
He
right
was
now?
so good as a freshman.
Plays for
there's
the
no
Ravens,
doubt, but
not Rashad Bateman, who just got Tylan Wallace. It could be the
Tylan
Tylan
Wallace.
scenario, where it's just like health concerns kind of override production.
All right. I'll end the mock here. I am pick 20. Last pick of this mock. I am taking Jahan Dodson, the wide receiver out of Penn State. This is definitely one of the players. I mentioned this in the same podcast where I said to buy the early seconds, I'm pretty sure, that Jahan Dodson is one of these guys that I want to target in the second round. I think that he is an NFL-ready prospect. He's not the flashiest player in the world, but to me, he's what makes the Penn State offense go. He's a really good deep threat, and I think he's all right underneath. There's a few things he needs to improve upon, but to me, I think that he's an NFL-ready receiver. He's not going to be the flashiest dude, but, dude, second-round value pick, I love it.
the back, even the middle, like pick 18 through 20, even our last.
There's value
That,
everywhere.
there's a lot of value in the middle. Even there's a few guys that didn't get drafted
Mhm.
here. You know, we have the likes of Kenny Pickett, quarterback from Pitt. There's a few other guys that come to mind, but this second round looks pretty juicy, man.
Yeah, and that's not even yet with some of the other running backs that are going to start getting hyped as the season progresses. It always happens where you have the random running backs start crawling out of the holes that they've come from and start getting hyped.
I mean, I think CJ Verdell's another guy that from Oregon that I think he's got injured and he's going to miss the rest of the year, but he was very good for a very productive Oregon team.
Yeah, like a Mo Ibrahim even too. You never know
Right,
if he ends up
We
getting
saw-
drafted somewhere juicy.
I was gonna say we saw it with Trey Sermon, whereas he just like the very end of the season, he just went like ape shit, and then his stock rose like crazy.
There's a lot of places where if a running back got drafted in the NFL, we'd instantly see him shoot up, like the Dolphins and Falcons stuff.
Yeah, like Zamir White is another guy.
Yeah.
Where could he go? Brian Robinson.
I like
Where could he
Brian
go?
Robinson.
I mean, we've seen it, especially from these big SEC teams like the Alabama mainly, where, dude, like they'll have one of their middle tier meddling running backs get drafted like 4th, 5th round, and they end up kind of being relevant, right? Like
Damian
if there's any
Harris.
team that's going to happen from, it's going to be one of these big
This
teams.
was early. All right. Season 2, episode 15. That's it. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe, comment. We try and interact. But not too much that it hurts the podcast viewers. And if you're a podcast, please like, rate, review. I don't know exactly.
We
how
love
it works,
you.
but yeah.
We love you, viewers.
Frank loves you. All right. I appreciate you. Thank you everyone for listening.